This is the 46 of 46 podcast summit sessions, where we'll talk all things Adirondack, backcountry, and beyond. From high peak stories and adventures to trail tips and tricks, we'll dive deep into the heart of these mountains and the people who passionately climb them. Adirondack maps and spruce traps to bushwhacks and backpacks. It's all here on the 46 of 46 summit sessions. Hello out there and welcome to the 46 of 46 podcast. I hope your 2024 is off to a fast start. And winter has finally arrived in a huge way up here in the Adirondacks. In case you're wondering, yes, we have snow and so much more coming. So grab your snowshoes, your skis, and all those layers and come on up to the park. Winter is officially here. Yes, it took till January, but hey, it's here now. But this week I'm back with a summit session with an absolute legend, to say the least. There are a lot of people in the Adirondacks who do incredibly impressive things. A lot of them have been on this podcast, but today's guest is in a league all his own. From his many charity endeavors to a single season winter 100 highest, yes, not just the 46 high peaks, but the 100 highest peaks in the park in one single winter season, to bushwhacking all 46 high peaks, this man is no stranger to challenging himself in these mountains that we all love and experiencing these mountains in a way that most of us never will. He also founded the ADK High Peaks Foundation, along with some others, and they've raised over $150,000, and most of that going right back into this forest preserve, doing absolutely amazing stuff for the Adirondacks and pushing himself and his limits in the process, so it's very exciting. His name is Neil Luckhurst, and he's here with me today to talk all about his latest charity endeavor, which will raise money to benefit the Forest Rangers Foundation, where he will complete a winter thru-hike, a supported winter thru-hike of the 46 high peaks. Neil, thank you for coming on the 46 of 46 podcast, and welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Very nice. Yeah, so you've done some absolutely amazing things. So we'll get into all of them, but what brought on this most recent charity event that you're going for? So the single season thru-hike, winter thru-hike, what spurred that on?
You know, I have no idea.
Great.
The idea just came to me. You know, I'm always sort of casting about mentally, thinking of, you know, a new project that I could do. And somehow this one just sort of came up. I'm a friend of Corey de Laval and Jan Welford, who they did a summer unsupported thru hike, and that may have been the germ that got me going. And the fact that now that I'm retired, it's a lot easier to put something like this together and be out there for an unlimited, you know, length of time.
Mm-hmm. Great. And yeah, pushing yourself pretty tremendously. I know in 2014. One of your charity event was the Winter 46 in 10 days. In 2016, you did something called Project Full Deck, which involved covering 48 peaks during a 2-week span through the High Peaks Wilderness, which half of those mountains were bushwhacks. So for all of you hikers out there, talk about a difficult level above what most of us are familiar with. And then in 2018, Project 100, which was the single season Winter 100 highest. And all of those were, you know, to raise money, and then this one is also to raise money. So what makes these physical endeavors that you go after, you know, where did the desire to raise money and, you know, give back to the park kind of stem from?
Well, 16 years ago on January 7th, my son, who is a 46er, he and I were father and son 46ers, did them all together as a team. He tragically died in an avalanche in the Canadian Rockies while backcountry skiing. And there was a tremendous outpouring of support and sympathy from what in those days were the most popular social media organs for hikers to communicate. And those were the online forums. I was an administrator of the ADK High Peaks Forum, as well as the Adirondack Forum, and I was also an active member of a forum called Views from the Top. Now, all three of those forums are still active, but at that time, the outpouring of support was very helpful to myself and my family. And I got the idea of starting up a foundation, and it's a 501(c)(3) foundation. And the co-administrator of the 80K High Peaks Forum, he's living in Rochester, and he knew a lawyer who would do pro bono. And so we set the foundation up back then and started raising money. And, now we've raised roughly 150,000. And like you said earlier, the money goes back into the Adirondacks or the forest preserve. So that can include the Catskills. And so these big hikes, these fundraising hikes, are a way for me to give back to the Adirondacks. And it's also helps a great deal with the never-ending grieving, the never-ending processing of the fact that my hiker son died in an avalanche at the age of 19 out in the Canadian Rockies. So that's where the origin of these big hikes, these big projects comes from. Plus, just the fact that I enjoy being out in the mountains. I enjoy being in the Adirondacks and getting to know them from every possible angle.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and you're getting to know them from every angle too. Bushwhacking them, doing them in the winter, doing them in the summer, and yes, I remember reading that story about your son, and it's devastating to hear. And I'm glad that there's something that you can do to, continue on with the grieving process and do some good in the process. And you're doing unbelievable good things. I mean, $150,000 raised, that is not a little chunk of change. And it's awesome too. I also can relate strongly to your desire to do things that push yourself physically, mentally, in the mountains, and then also have a better, give back factor to it. It's like, well, I'm going to do this event, so why not make it a positive one that gives back to this very land that I like to push myself on. So as a Adirondack hiker and a native, I appreciate and thank you for doing that, because I think that's absolutely amazing. And tell us, so before we get too deep into the episode, give us a little bit of a background about yourself. So how'd you get into the outdoors and doing these big, we'll call them projects. Well, these big projects here in the Adirondacks. Tell us kind of your background.
Well, I started in the outdoors when I was 18. So that's going back just about 50 years now, because I'm 67. And the first outdoor experience was a canoe trip, which looking back on it is really funny. But that was the start. And I just gradually worked into winter sports, cross-country skiing. And then we got into winter camping out of Winnipeg. And those were 4 to 6 day winter camping trips. And it was always -40. And we would leave Winnipeg by train and get dropped off in the middle of the Canadian Shield, picked up 6 days later by the train, and head home again. And so that was when things started getting a little more extreme when I was in my 20s. And getting into the Adirondacks, fast forward after doing a number of years out in the Canadian Rockies, if I fast forward to the Adirondacks with my son, we started off, just the typical hit the high points, Marcy, Algonquin, found out along the way about the 46, and then we started doing that. And in so doing, I decided, I want to do this in winter. And then I heard about the 100 highest from somebody else, and I said, I want to do that. And then when I started doing the 100 highest, I said, well, I should really bushwhack all of them. And I ended up doing just that. It took a while. I ended up bushwhacking all 100 over a course of a few years. And one thing led to another. And, you get hearing about other people, and you become friends with people, and you hear of more extreme endeavors. I don't know, you've probably heard of Pin, who did 100 rounds of the 46. He would do 2 full rounds every season until he got to 100. And then I heard, Pin and another fellow called Random Scooter, who did the 100 highest in a single winter, and that inspired me. And really, I just sort of went from one step to the next. And what I've always been very mindful of doing in these is to stay in my own personal sweet spot. Not too hard, not too difficult, not dangerous. It's something that I'm pretty sure I'll succeed at, but it will be, difficult. But it'll keep me in a sweet spot where I'm able to really enjoy the mountains and to enjoy what I'm doing and to avoid, getting into a sufferfest.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Isn't it crazy how your story was just so linear, it just so naturally kind of progressed from one thing. Okay, let's do the next thing, and let's do the next thing. Oh, this will be a little harder. Let's keep progressing. And it's funny how that's just what happens. The mountains grab a hold of you, and you just start doing more and more and more. And it makes perfect sense. It's a very linear story. And 67 years old, my God. You were doing circles around people 27 years old, let alone doing this at 67. Absolutely incredible stuff.
Yeah. And, but for me, it's important not really to compare myself to anybody because I'm in my sweet zone. And for me, that's all that matters. And, if somebody goes out and they've never hiked and they do Cascade and they struggle and it's hard, I'm totally, impressed by them and really happy for them. And even if they never go back, at least they've done that one thing and it's part of them. And I think that's really important. My wife is an avid hiker, but she knows exactly how much mileage she wants to do, how much elevation, and she doesn't go over that. And that's her. We talk about that, and I say, yeah, you've identified your sweet spot, and you respect it, and you stick to it. And pleasure and enjoyment is the number one goal of all of these things.
Absolutely. I love that perspective. It's to find that sweet spot makes it an enjoyable experience. I mean, there's so many times where people are doing these big endeavors and they're a sufferfest. They just don't enjoy it. And then they finish and like, they don't really want to be in the mountains anymore. They've had enough. Whereas when you can exactly as you said, respect your sweet spot, suddenly everything is more enjoyable. It's more fun. You don't have to have that kind of dread when you're going there or in the middle of it. It just all leaves and it's all fun. You leave with a smile on your face. There's definitely something to be said about figuring that out for yourself. And my wife is the same way. She knows what mountains that she'll come hike with me and what mountains, no, I'm not interested in that. And, it's good to know that it's, your boundaries a little bit, but in the sense of, I do think it's more of a mental thing to know when is it going to not be enjoyable anymore? And when is it going to be? Because we're just hiking mountains. We're just walking in the woods. Let's keep it enjoyable. Nobody outside the trail cares what you're doing. No one understands or can even really fathom what you're doing. When you go down the street, tell them, hey, I just hiked the Dix Range. Most people will say, I don't know what that means. So it's like, okay, yeah, let's keep it into perspective and enjoy ourselves out in the mountains and not push ourselves to where we hate being out there. So I can respect that tremendously, especially for someone like yourself that is doing these things that are absolutely bonkers in terms of the commitment, the physical activity, the prowess of it all. So very cool. So in 2014, you did a winter 46 in 10 days, and that was a charity event. So let's talk a little bit about a couple of these different things you've done. So tell us about that. Tell us about what it was like doing the winter 46 in 10 days, maybe some stories, and then what did you raise money for? That was in 2014.
Right. That was a lot of fun. It was so much fun. And I prepared for 6 months. I began training fairly formally for 6 months. And that was in the heyday of the Internet Hiking Forum, ADK High Peaks, as well as there was a French forum. And I was very active on that one as well. And so I had a tremendous amount of support. I think that raised $15,000 all on its own. And I had partners, lots of partners. Every day I went out, except for one. And it was a ball. And because I had done the 6 months worth of training, it really wasn't that grueling. I remember going up, I can't remember what day it was, going up the steep trail on Dix from Round Pond, and it was over in a flash. I mean, we were up on past the Hunters Pass Junction and on the summit, and like it felt like I floated up there. And I would come back. My friend, who at that time was renting a vacation rental unit, his contribution was he gave it to me. He says, you stay in it for free for 12 days or whatever the length of time you need. So I would go back, get a ride back home to the cabin. And, my friend would even come out and grab my pack and pull it in. His wife cooked phenomenal food every night. So I was kind of treated like royalty. It was so much fun. And yeah, it was 10 days. There was one particular day that was pretty tough. I was accompanied by David Gomlak, who runs the hostel, T-Max and Topo Hostel. And we started off doing Wright, Algonquin, Iroquois. Then we went down to Lake Colden, walked around, then went up Marshall. We decided not to go via Shepherd's Tooth and down to the pass. We decided to go all the way down across, all the way up Marshall. And then we went across the lakes, Avalanche Lake, Lake Colden, back to the High Peaks Information Center, got a cup of coffee, got kicked out because they were closing. It was now about 4 or 4:30. And then we went out the door and we did Street and Nye. Of course, those were done in the dark. And my friend says it was 9,000 feet of elevation. That was a big day. And I would say on that particular day, I did go beyond my sweet spot. But, that happens. You can't always be right in that zone. You got to be able to take some discomfort. And then we finished off the last day was Colvin, Blake, Nippletop, Dial. Actually, Dial, Nippletop, Blake, Colvin in that order. I didn't go step onto the summit of Colvin, went over to Blake and finished officially on the summit of Colvin.
Sure.
And, and it was really funny because by that time I would not really eat much on the hikes, didn't feel a need for it, and would drink maybe a quarter of an Nalgene of water all day.
Wow.
Yeah, I guess you for sure that, and so you're not. We can get into that shortly. A lot of the physiology of these big hikes. I'm an amateur student of exercise physiology, and so that was a real fun 10 days. I have to admit, on day 10, I was glad that it was over. But
sure,
it was. It's rarely in people's lives that you can be so focused on a single, task that involves doing something that you love. So that was great.
Sure. Yeah, we're losing you a little bit. Hopefully everyone could understand everything you were just saying, cell phone service. Can't trust it. Can't trust it. But I know exactly what you're talking about. You're ready to be done at that point. I always tell people, I in my line of work, we work like 12 to 14 hours a day. And a lot of times people say, oh, that's a cool job that you have. And I say, no matter what you like doing it for a certain amount of time, even if it's the most fun thing you enjoy, there's always a point where you've had enough. You don't want to do it anymore, no matter what it is, whether it's, anything you're doing for 12 hours a day, even if it's fun, you get to the point where I'm ready to be done for the day now. And the same thing with this, for sure. Now,
same thing. Exactly.
was the Winter 46 in 10 days, was that your first time doing a big project like this with like a charity, raising money kind of aspect to it, or had you done that before?
No, that was the very first one.
Cool. Now, let's talk about that for a second. So what made you originally say, let me do this to try to raise money? And how did you, kind of get that going?
Well, we already had the foundation. It already existed. So it really was just logical to turn it into a fundraiser. And again, the same individual, Jack Coleman, he was involved in the fundraising arm, setting up, I can't remember what we used in order for how people did make donations, but it was just a logical step because our foundation had raised money through gatherings. We had every year in March, early March, still in solar winter, we would arrange a gathering at what was then called the Arc Trail Inn on Route 9N. It's now called the Adirondack Trail Inn, I think. In any case, we had gatherings every year. We would raise, good money through these gatherings, and we would put a group of people on every one of the 46. So people would go out, they would, we'd have it all set up on the forum threads that people would sign up and put their name down against, okay, well, I'm doing this peak, and we'd have every peak covered. And then on the day of the gathering, a Saturday, everyone would go out and would do their summits and then come back to the motel. They had a large common area and a really good commercial kitchen, and it would be a potluck dinner and a party. And it was great. And we would raise money. We would say to people, well, okay, if you're participating, we'd like you to make a donation. If someone couldn't, that was okay too. They didn't have to. Mm-hmm. But when we raised significant amount of money every year through these gatherings, and the first one was just to pass the hat. Me and another guy said, we'll jump. This is March, early March. Said, we'll jump in the Ausable River because the motel is right on the river. Said, we'll jump in if people put money in the hat. And so we raised, I don't know, $200 or $300 just like that, passing the hat around. So we jumped in the river and there was a big bonfire going. So we ran out of the river and by the bonfire. The motel owners weren't expecting something like that. Of course, they were probably worried about liability issues.
Joe, I bet they were. Yeah.
But it was a lot of fun. And then the next year when we had the gathering, same owners. And I remember Kathleen, who was the owner, she said, you're not going in the river again, are you? And I said, Classic. No, it's just a one-shot deal.
Sure.
And so we were used to raising money. We had a calendar event every year where people would submit photographs, and we would people would vote on their favorite pictures, and then we would compile the votes, and the winning pictures would go on the calendar. People would buy calendars, and we would raise money selling calendars. There was all kinds of fun ways of raising money. So when I did the what I called Project 46 in 10 days and 14, it was just totally logical that it would be a fundraiser.
Yeah, no, it's again a very organic and linear progression to get to that point of, okay, let's do some. We know you like to grind out big things in the mountains, so let's do one and raise some money in the process. It makes perfect sense.
Exactly.
Very cool. So let's talk about your next one now, Project Full Deck 2016. You hiked 48 peaks in the High Peaks Wilderness during a 2-week span, and half of those were bushwhacks. So before we even get into it, tell us the very first story that comes to your mind from that endeavor. Hit us with the first thing that just popped in your head when I said, let's talk about Project Full Deck. Tell us that story, and then we'll learn more about it as well. Have a little fun.
Well, my friend Glenn and I were camped under a tarp, sil nylon 10 by 12 tarp, in the Sawtooth Range in the coal between Sawtooth 4 and Sawtooth 2. And it was raining hard, and there was thunder and lightning all through the night. And I don't know, it might have been 3 a.m. I hear my friend Glenn say to me, what are our bailout options?
Especially out there.
Yeah, and I hadn't thought of it. We'd only done 4, Sawtooth number 4, and there are 5 Sawtooth peaks that were on my itinerary. And so I thought about it, and I said, well, we'll go over 2, and then we will just bypass all the other ones and go straight out to the Moose Pond lean-to on the Northfield Placid Trail. But lying under the tarp at night up in that coal is probably one of my most, that's the memory that comes to mind.
Yeah, great.
That and getting lost, as we couldn't find the summit of Sawtooth 2. It was, totally socked in. And I did the entire hike using only map and compass. We had no electronic navigation devices. So we were up somewhere, and I thought I had it dialed in from memory. I thought I recognized where to go to get up onto Sawtooth 2. And it was obvious we were not on the summit, and we didn't have a clue which way to go to get to the summit. So we we backtracked and we did get to the summit. But that moment, of being in a total whiteout in the rain, it was probably 40 degrees. That is part and parcel of that same memory that comes to mind with Project Full Deck.
Mm-hmm. All right. Talk about a, building some grit moment out there. And I mean, all of these are too, but that moment in particular for sure. Very cool.
Yeah.
Do you do all of your, do you hike with a GPS now or still using map and compass?
I do both. I'm comfortable doing both. I like to maintain my map and compass skills, but I like also using electronic gear as well.
Yeah, they have their benefits. They all have their places. They're all tools. They all have their time and time to be used for sure.
But, if I'm going deliberately to be, going out and honing and doing something by map and compass, I won't have any electronic navigation device with me in my pack.
Mm-hmm.
So I know I can't fall back on that. And that increases your sense of awareness of your terrain, keeping track of where you are on the map, your compass bearings. But if you have a phone or whatever, a device, you might not be as focused, because you got to keep track of where you're going. You want to get out.
Yeah, I know. It gives you that to fall back on. Otherwise, you have to be focused, and you have to say, okay, I can't cheat now. This is what I have to do. Let me take note. Makes sense. Now, I didn't get before. So what was I know you're raising money for your foundation. Do you remember for the Winter 46 and 10 days and Project Full Deck where, what you raised money for during those two endeavors?
Yeah, actually for the, if I remember correctly, for the Project 46, the very first one, I believe the money just went into our general fund.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't specifically earmarked for any particular project. Whereas Project Full Deck, I said to Jack, I want this to go to something specific. I think people will be maybe more generous if they know exactly where their donation is going to go. So we chose LAZAR, Lower Adirondack Search and Rescue. They wanted to buy GPS collars for their rescue dogs. So we wrote them a check for the exact amount that came in through the donations. And it was in the tune of $5,000.
Great.
And, it was considerably less than the first project. And what that made me realize, or maybe afterwards, was that what resonates with people is the 46. And this Project Full Deck, and the reason I called it Full Decks, because originally there was 52 peaks, hence the name Full Deck, full deck of cards. And I ended up doing 48. So that one was earmarked. And the 100 highest, I can't remember what, the money all goes in the foundation, but I can't recollect if there was a specific, beneficiary from the fundraising.
Now on Project Full Deck, so you originally had 52 peaks in mind. You did 48. How did you, and half of those were bushwhacks, how did you determine what mountains you're going to summit during that one?
Well, I sat down at home on the computer with a mapping program. And I remember it doesn't exist anymore. They don't make it, National Geographic Topo. And I just studied it. And I decided I wanted to do something that was going to be more or less linear with little to no backtracking. So it would always be going forward. And I started just experimenting, drawing on the map and saving it, drawing, connecting different peaks together. And it didn't take very long. I came up with these 52 peaks. And some of them I knew I absolutely wanted to cover. There was the Sawtooth Range, the Sentinel Range. There were big priorities. Mm-hmm. And it just came together by drawing, having a great deal of familiarity with, both the trailed and the trailless peaks. It became fairly easy to draw this linear hike, and that's really, it wasn't random. I really checked to see how I could tie together different hikes. Hence the fact that some were trail and some were untrailed. That was the way to connect different, hikes together. So that's how the itinerary came about.
Mm-hmm. You did that was that as a thru hike, that whole 2-week span?
Yeah, that was the intention. However, when we got to the top of Henderson, it was cold, it was raining, and the forecast was bad. And I don't know how I knew the forecast was bad, because I think my wife had met us after Adams. We came down to the trailhead on the trail and hiked into the Henderson lean-to, and she said it's going to rain hard. And sure enough, the next day we headed out in the rain. It was 40 on top of Henderson, windy. And my plan was to do Little Santanoni and to camp out under my tarp alone. My friend was going to hike out from the Bradley Pond lean-to. And so I remember sitting there watching the rain, and he said, well, what are you going to do? Are you coming with me, or are you going up Little Santanoni? And I thought about it, and I said, I'm coming with you.
Sure.
So I hiked out and slept at the hostel that night. And then my wife drove me right back. But I didn't do Little Santanoni because my partner, the next partner, he had, the plan was to meet up on the Cooch. I was going to hike, bushwhack from Santanoni to from Henderson to Little Santanoni over to Cooch. And the way it just worked out, I had to orphan Little Santa. And that was the friend who we did the Santa range, and then we bushwhacked up into the Sawtooth from Wardbrook lean-to.
Mm-hmm.
So the way that hike came about is that particular summer, my wife says, well, for your vacation, do whatever you want to do. She said, it's your turn. Just do whatever you feel like doing. So that's where I came up with the idea of doing this thru hike.
Sure. Awesome. Love that. Now, the Project 100, the single season winter 100 highest, tell us the first story that comes to mind from that endeavor. That was 2018. So hit us with the first story that comes to your head.
Well, let me just think briefly. I guess it has to be back again in the Sawtooth range. In 2 days of hiking, roughly 25 hours of hiking in 2 days. Slept in a bed. There was no camping on that. Temperature never went above 0 Fahrenheit. And on the second day, we had 3 peaks to do, Sawtooth 3, 5, and 1 in that order. And going up Sawtooth 1, daylight was fading. We still had probably 500 feet of elevation. We could look up and see the trees waving back and forth in the wind. And it's very steep. It's probably, a good 50% grade, if not more. And to get up the mountain, I looked at my hike. I had 2 partners, and this one girl, she was punching her arms into the snow up to about halfway to her shoulder, between the elbow and shoulder, and then pulling herself up like on self-belay with using her arms as a support to pull herself up the snow. It was so steep.
Mm-hmm.
Got to the summit, took a quick picture, and we started going down. And I did all of the Project 100, the off trail. I used the GPS for all of it. And the battery pack on the back of the GPS sprung open. The batteries that were in there were white, and they disappeared into the snow. It was getting dark, and now I knew I could get out on a compass bearing, but luckily, one of the other guys that was with us, he whipped off his pack, opened it up, and pulled out brand new lithium batteries, and off we went. But that particular moment up on Sawtooth 1, our final Sawtooth peak, that was, what comes mostly to mind, and it was a defining moment of the winter, because I felt that after that weekend, 25 hours of hiking, I lost fitness that I never got back again throughout the remainder of the project. It's like I had dipped into my capital of my fitness, and I was never quite as fit after that.
That's fascinating. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think when you go out, and if you're trying to, let's say, for example, a person is trying to improve fitness, you want a stimulus, a training stimulus. Mm-hmm. And immediately after, of course, you're more tired, you're less fit than when you started. But after a 24 to 48 hour period, you are going to be more fit. You're going to adapt, and your fitness will increase by an increment. But if you go out and do something that is too hard, too long, your fitness will drop down to a much lower level, and you need recovery time, but you will not recover up to the base level of fitness you were at before that too difficult workout. So I think that's what happened. I did the 2 days in a row, and then I think I took 4 rest days after that, and there was no question about it. I didn't have the same level of strength and endurance as I had up to that point. Mm-hmm. So that was interesting. That's very, very interesting from a physiology point of view.
Oh, definitely. As I spend a lot of time in my gym in my garage, so that's why I was curious to hear your answer for that. That's a definitely interesting subject matter all in on its own.
Oh yeah.
Now, what inspired I know you had talked earlier about other people who've done the Winter 100 highest. I should say, what made you decide to pull the trigger on going after that in 2018?
It again, it came into my head, and I knew it had been done. So I knew it could be done. Mm-hmm. And I really don't, I honestly don't know. I said, yep, that's what I want to do. And it inspired me. It interested me. It ticked all the boxes. And so I went for it.
Mm-hmm. Love it. And how long did it take to do the all 100?
I started on the 22nd of December, and I finished on the 18th of March, which was my birthday.
All right. Happy birthday. That's a winter. That's a full winter right there. Very nice. Very nice.
And I was semi-retired. So
sure.
I was working 2 days a week only, and Tuesdays and Thursdays. And so I was able to come down and do 3 big days of hiking, and either nothing on the 4th day or something like Lion, a light Cascade Porter, something like that.
Cool. Very nice. Now, so that's a winter expedition there. So there must have been some more, you told the story on the Sawtooth Range. There must have been some more wintry days. Let's just put it that, where, the weather had you maybe a little nervous, or snowstorm comes in. Any stories like that from that adventure?
In early January, the temperature went down to about negative 20 F. And even in one hike we started, it was negative 30 F. And I remember doing the lower range with a friend, started up Wedge Brook, did Lower Wolf Jaw, Upper Wolf Jaw. We finished on Sawtooth, and it was so cold. And I remember going across Gothics with the wind. We had, masks, goggles. But on the summit, I remember taking my goggles off, and my friend got a picture, and my eyelashes are all covered in little drops of ice, little beads of ice. Mm-hmm. And that was, I knew that we were in temperatures that were unforgiving, in spite of having, a massive down parka and, puffy pants. I carried down booties. If one of us had become immobilized, I could have used my spot device to trigger a rescue, and we could have hunkered down, and we would have survived. But nevertheless, that was pretty intense. That degree of cold was intense. I didn't have cold feet. I wasn't cold. I was dressed appropriately, but I knew that we were in the unforgiving temperatures. So that comes first and foremost to mind, that cold weather.
Mm-hmm, definitely. No, you were, I would definitely say that's unforgiving temperatures, negative 30 degrees, 100%, especially on top of a mountain, especially a mountain like Gothics, for example, in the lower Great Range, where it's exposed and it gets windy up there. That's for sure.
Yeah. We didn't linger on the summit.
Mm-hmm. Now,
I don't think yeah. So go ahead.
I was to say, do you remember what charity you donated for that, for the Project 100?
I believe the funds went into once again into our general fund.
Mm-hmm, sure.
I don't recollect if we had a specific charity lined up for that one.
Great. And now, earlier you said that one of the events, I believe it was the Winter 46 in 10 days, you trained for 6 months leading up to it. So what does your training look like as you prepare for these big endeavors in the mountains?
That's very interesting because each of the endeavors has been different, and I have trained differently for each one. And now I'm always pretty much, this is the fourth one. Every one of them, I've had a 6-month formal training regimen, usually with a 2 to 4 week transition into training phase where it's unstructured and I'm just getting out and doing stuff. Now, I have combined various training modalities, including the gym, resistance training, step ups with weights, squats, sled pushes, and also a lot of hill climbs, steep hill climbs, to the tune of 6,000 vertical feet per week over 3 sessions, and a lot of hiking. And being very mindful of my heart rate, what zone I'm in. Obviously, for these big hikes, you're going to be mostly in zone 1 and 2 of the 5 intensity zones. But I also would make sure I folded in a good deal of zone 3 training to get a different training stimulus. So I would use a lot of knowledge of physiology to put together these training programs. And initially, I used the ultra running websites to try to get information. And then a book came out called Training for the New Alpinism, and specifically designed for uphill athletes in an alpine or mountain setting. And that book was the game changer. Very, very, very good, well put together, well structured book. Training for the New Alpinism, and has guided and informed most of my training ever since. But earlier I said that each project I train for differently according to the dictates of it. Now, this particular one, I'm going to be carrying a heavy pack and be carrying it over very many summits, but I will still be carrying it for some good mileage and some good elevation. I will have to go over 3 summits, including Marcy, the highest, with about a 40-pound pack. So I've been doing a lot of training with water jugs, way more weight than I've ever trained with before, and pretty much just in zone 1 and 2. My heart rate, I'll go up, up to Upper Wolf Jaw with 30-pound pack, and my heart rate, it will barely crack 110, maybe here and there it might hit 120 for very short periods. And, I'm keeping my eye on my altimeter and maintaining a feet per minute elevation gain and, around 20. If I see it going up to 27, 24, 27, I immediately slow down because I say, no, I don't want to be training that hard. And I'm going out doing like 5 days in a row, perhaps picking up 15 to 20,000 feet of elevation, some with, water jugs in the pack, some without. So this particular training, I haven't had the opportunity to use the gym, which would have been good, but it just hasn't worked out for me. It's all hiking and all very slow. I'm going out on Thursday with a friend, and I've warned her. I said, get ready for a slow hike. Because I'm not going fast. And she says, okay, yeah, that's fine. We'll do it slow. And we're going to do down the top Colvin Blake. And so the training, I like the 6 months. You get a very deep, I call it a deep well of aerobic power. You become fat adapted, which I believe is very important, that you're pretty much in the fat burning zone all the time, all day. And so this training regime is long, drawn out. It leaves time for setbacks. And the key is to do a lot of your training on the trails that you're going to be doing your project on. Not in the gym, really. It's okay to do the weight training in the gym, but for me, there's no point. I feel in my case, there's no point to do any cardiovascular or any aerobic conditioning in the gym. I get it all on trail.
Yeah. No, it makes perfect sense. And I tell people all the time, getting in mountain shape, hiking mountains, it's just different. It's not, you could run a marathon and it doesn't necessarily mean you'll be able to slam the mountains. It's still a different type of cardiovascular effort, and it's hard to really mimic it anywhere else except just out in the woods, climbing mountains.
That's a good point. And I spent 4 months hiking in the Canadian Rockies, doing a combination of trail hiking and scrambling.
Mm-hmm.
And when I came to the Adirondacks, I think it was about the 2nd or 3rd of November to shift my preparation to Adirondack specific hiking, I had to scale back considerably my elevation gains because the hiking here in the Adirondacks is so much more difficult than anywhere else I've hiked in the world. The trails are steep, they're rugged, there's a mix of rocks, roots, mud, water, ice, and it is very tough hiking. And you have to develop a lot of what I call tissue toughness. Has nothing to do with, VO2 max, has nothing to do with any of that stuff. It's just the fascia on the bottoms of your feet, your tendons, your ligaments, all those secondary accessory muscles you never use. You've got to the only way you can toughen them up is you've got to be constantly, regularly soliciting them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Nothing beats it. You can't really mimic it, and you can't replicate it anywhere else except out on the trails.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about this latest endeavor. So this is a thru hike of the 46 high peaks, a winter thru hike. And before we even get into it, you can donate to this cause, and the money donated is going to the Forest Rangers Foundation. There is a Facebook page. You can search 46 thru hike, winter thru hike. You'll find it on Facebook, and that has all the information. I'll also put a link in the show notes where you can donate. But let's hear a little bit about this. So it's a 46 high peaks thru hike, winter thru hike, and hit us to start with when you're going, how long you expect to be out there, and then we'll talk about your itinerary for the trip.
Okay, well, I'm planning on starting on February 14th, not because I'm a fan of Valentine's Day, but it just worked out. That just works out the best for some of the people who are available to join me starting on a Friday. I worked my way back, and February 14th made sense. The days are getting longer. Hopefully the nights won't be as cold as through January, although we haven't tasted any cold weather yet.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully I'll be ahead of any thawing and raining coming in, potentially in March. So I chose February 14th, and that's the start date. And I believe if the weather is good and I don't have any weather days, and if I don't need more rest than I have planned into the hike, I should be able to do it in 18 days.
All right. That's a quick trip through the 46 high peaks in the wintertime. I love it. It's exciting. Of course, you've done the winter 46 in 10 days. So that's, almost double the amount of days, but it's a different endeavor now. It's a different animal that you're staying outside the whole time.
Yeah. And, I can, if I feel the need to add a rest day, well, I'll just do it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to be done by a specific date. Although the people who are lining up to help me out, resupply and stuff like that, it could definitely mix things up for them. If somebody says, well, I can help you on, March 2nd and 3rd, and then, whoops, I've added a rest day. So what they had planned doesn't work anymore. It's going to require continual tweaking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Of the plan. But yeah, so I think 18 days is theoretically possible. It takes 20, fine. If I get it done in 17, fine.
Sure. I love that. Now, is there a part of you that had, you're probably excited to just, do the thing to begin with. Is there any part of you that's like a little nervous because it's going to be 18 days out there? I'm out there in the elements. I'm pushing myself physically. I'm not going to be inside. Is there any part of you that's a little nervous, or is it all excitement, or like a mix? How does that go for you?
I'm definitely a little nervous. I'm a little intimidated by the plan. I'm at times wondering if my training is going to be sufficient. But at the same time, I don't want to overtrain, don't want to train myself into an overuse injury. 67 is not the same as doing something like this if you're 30. It's a whole different ball game. So I'm a little concerned, a little nervous about it. But, I can add rest days if required. The camping without any heat source has me wondering what it's going to be like first thing in the morning, getting out of the sleeping bag. I have my strategy for dealing with that. Or if it's, a particularly cold day and my base layers are wet, my hands are cold, I come into camp, I've got to immediately, take care of myself. It's not like you step into a warm car or step into a warm building. I have to strip off the wet outer layers, immediately put on the dry layers that I have with me, and generate some warmth. So those are challenges for sure.
Yeah.
And I'm a little, concerned about if I'm going to be strong enough to haul the 40-pound pack up some of the steeper inclines. There's only one way to find out, though. I still have another 5 weeks of training, 5 to 6 weeks. So I'm still going out, testing, and I'm now in the final stages of the training. I'm adding to my loads, heavier pack, longer days, increased elevation gains. So, but yeah, indeed, to answer your question, I'm a little nervous.
Sure. Are you programming all of the training you're doing? Are you working with someone else, bouncing ideas off other people, or is it just you calling the shots for that?
It's just me. Yeah, I haven't anybody, following me or, telling me do this, do that. And so my training, I'll say, okay, well, this week, these 5 days, this is my goal. But by day 3, sometimes, or day 4, I say, no, day 5, I'm going to do less. Or there's been times when I thought I'd do, 4 days on, 2 days off, 4 days on. And whoops, after the third day, I said, no, I need a break. And so I'm, rather than adhering to a very specific training program, I'm keeping it very fluid. And I'm relying, I guess, enough on past experience to know when I can push harder, when I have to back off, and, getting closer to what I think is an ideal training stimulus, which is, the big question in training. How much is enough? How much is too much? How long of a break do you need? Then there's no hard and fast answer. It's an art as much as a science.
Yeah. And your hard-earned wisdom and grit that you've developed from these endeavors will serve you well, certainly as you're out there. So so on February 14th, what are we starting on? And then take us through the mountains, the itinerary.
Well, I'll start off at the Atmospheric Sciences Research Center and do Esser. And this will be with a day pack. And then I'll go over Whiteface and down to Connery Pond. Now that trail is seldom used in winter. So I'm hoping to get in there and pre-break it. Or if I'm lucky enough to have somebody lined up who says, oh, no problem, I'll break it. I'll go in from Connery Pond to the summit of Whiteface and I'll meet you up there and we'll hike out together. That'd be good. So after Connery Pond, it'll be road walking, a little bit of trails, but mostly road walking to the hostel, T-Max and Topless Hostel, where a tent will have been set up for me. So I'll spend the night in the tent, and my wife, who is Sylvie Cartier, who is also logistics co-manager, she'll bring me out a hot meal.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Yeah. And then the next morning, I'll walk from the hostel along Route 73 to the Cascade Trailhead. and I'll go over Cascade Porter, come down Blueberry to Marcy Field. And again, hopefully that'll be pre-broken. And then I'll walk down the road. I'm doing these road walks at the beginning to get them out of the way because it's not that much fun. And I'll be doing the road walks with a day pack, not with the full pack. And then I'll camp near Giant, at the base of Giant and Rocky. There's the wash bowl. There's a campsite there. Or I may go, 250 feet off the trail lower down into the woods, and we'll pick out a spot and the tent will be set up waiting for me. And then, so after I've done Rocky and Giant the next morning, we're on day 3, I will then, it's a very short road walk to Round Pond, and I'll hike into the Buckette Lean-To. It's about a 2.5, 3-hour hike with a big pack. And the next morning is when it gets real. I'm going to be doing an out and back hike of the Dix Range. So we're talking going over Dix, going over Huff, South Dix, and then from South Dix out and back to Macomb, then out and back to Grace, and then turning around and going back over Huff, going up over the Beckhorn and coming back down to the Lean-To. So that's a big one.
Yeah, that's a day.
It's about 12 miles, which isn't too bad mileage-wise, but the elevation each way, it adds up to about 6,000 feet. So that's a hefty day.
Yeah, definitely. That's a full day, all right.
Yeah, and we'll be camping a second night in the Buckette Lean-To, and then the next morning we'll get up and we'll go up a pre-broken bushwhack route up Gravestone Brook to the Leech Trail in the Dial Bear Den Call, go over Dial, go over Nippletop, come down, drop packs at the Nippletop Colvin Junction, take day packs, go over Colvin Blake, come back, and then when we get to the Gilbrook campsite, tent will be set up, and somebody has said, I'm going to cook you guys a gourmet meal and bring in wine. And so I said, yeah, bring it on.
Absolutely.
That sounds great.
Why not?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
They'll meet my wife and a couple other women are going to handle that particular aspect. They'll just have to walk in the AMR road. It's not really a huge thing for them. It's great. It's perfect. And then the next morning we'll take off, drop the weight at the Gilbrook Cutoff Trail, do an out and back to Sawteeth, pick up the weight. And when I say drop the weight, what I mean is we'll take day packs. Mm-hmm. We probably won't go up, packless in winter. And then we'll hike down the road, and at the Canyon Bridge cutoff, somebody's going to meet us and take the tent, and they will de-supply us wet clothing. And then we're going to go up over with the big packs over Wolfjaw Notch, drop them in the call, do Lower Wolfjaw, go down to the Howard Lean-To. And so then the next day, which will be day 7, I've programmed in just to do Big Slide. So kind of a rest day.
Mm-hmm,
and
sure.
then day 8, we'll go up the Orbed Trail and we'll do Saddleback, Gothics up the Cable Route, Armstrong, Upper Wolfjaw, down to the Notch, back to the Lean-To for another night. So now we're into the 3rd night at the Lean-To. And then on day 9, I don't know who's going to be with me at that point. I'm going to go up Slant Rock, drop my gear in the Lean-To, and then do Haystack and Basin, go back to the Lean-To for one night. And then the next morning is a big one over Marcy with the pack, and down the other side and do Skylight and Gray, and then go down to the Feldspar Lean-To. So that'll be the 10th night. 10th camp. Mm-hmm. And then next morning, head out, do Redfield, Cliff, and then turn around, go back, pick up my pack in the Lean-To, then do Colden, Crossover Trail, Tabletop, down the Van Hoe, Phelps, and then out to the lodge where I will be staying in a Lean-To that they rent. And the next day will be a bit of a rest day, street and eye only. And then the following day, I'll go out and do Wright, Algonquin, Iroquois, come back for another night at the Lodge Lean-To. So there's 3 nights there. And that's what I call roadside resupply, because they'll be able to drive up and bring in whatever, hot food.
Oh yeah.
Hot food and cold beer. And then the next day I'll take off and do Marshall, and dropping the weight in the lean-to, Herbert Brook lean-to, go up Marshall. Following day, this is critical that it be broken out by friends down the Hanging Spears Trail, and then do Allen, get back to the junction, and then pick up the pack and hike out and camp somewhere in the vicinity of Lake Jimmy or somewhere near the trailhead. I have to work out what's legal and what isn't. Roadside resupply. And then all that's left is to hike into Bradley Pond for Camp 16, do the 3 Santas, spend the night in the lean-to at Bradley Pond. And then another very critical section is from Bradley Pond lean-to to the Ward Brook lean-to via Duck Hole. That's, nobody hikes that in the winter. And there's a group from Quebec who have said that they thought they would do a through hike from the Seward Trailhead to the Santa Trailhead, going through and camping at Duck Hole, and that way that group would be able to break out that whole section for me.
Sure, that'd be great.
Well, otherwise, and going through various scenarios in my head, I thought, well, if I'm alone and I've got my pack, what I could do, worst case scenario, maybe go a half mile without the pack, go back, get the pack, carry it to the end of my broken trail, dump it, and break another half mile, and spend literally a whole day. And I'd be done when I get into the Ward Brook lean-to, and then Seymour, and then the final hiking day would be from the Ward Brook lean-to, doing the other 3 Sewards, St. Donalds, and Emmons. And that'll be a pretty big day, 18 miles for doing those 3. And I believe it's about 4,500 feet of elevation change. And then that would be the end of the hike.
What an adventure it's going to be. That's for sure.
Well, my goal is to enjoy this and to live an experience. That's really, for me, the name of the game. In spite of, I know there are going to be tough times on the hike. My goal is, not a fastest known time, but a best known time.
Yeah, no, it's important to enjoy yourself, and why push yourself if you can enjoy it? Like you said, you've given yourself time if you need an extra day, you'll take an extra day. So be it. That's going to definitely bode well for you, I'm sure, while you're out there. But what an adventure this will be. We'll definitely have have you come back on the podcast in March to tell the story. We'll have to hear how it all went and hear that part of it.
Yeah, there'll certainly be some highlights.
Oh yeah, I'm sure there'll be lots of highlights, lots of stuff to talk about. So now you decided for this endeavor in particular to donate to the Forest Rangers Foundation, the money that you raised. So now what made you choose that foundation?
Well, that was our foundation president's idea. And he said, this will resonate with our donors, who, everybody potentially may one day benefit from a rescue, and everyone knows the Rangers are underfunded and that they do great work. So when Jack Coleman said to me, what about, earmarking at least a portion of the funds to the Ranger Foundation? And I said right away, oh yeah, it's perfect. Don't have to look any further. We've got it. I don't know if we'll be donating like 100% of the, funds that come in. We have other things in mind. We're often solicited for, donations anywhere from $500 to $5,000. People will, we have a form on our website that they can fill in. And there's 4 of us who we discuss it, and then we vote on it, whether, such and such a project is within our purview. But I believe that the first priority is the Forest Rangers. they deserve it.
Yeah, absolutely. The unsung heroes of the Adirondack Park. I think that's a fantastic organization to be giving your money to, and a fantastic group of people to receive it. Especially in the, as we're here in the winter time, and yeah, they're going to be working twice as hard now on the rescues that keep happening. And, just this time of year in particular, man, I feel for those people. I feel for them hard.
Yeah, you must be aware of the recent rescue on South Dix.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That was, quite something.
I heard all about it while it was happening because my a friend of mine, his neighbor is a ranger, so we heard kind of it as it was going on. Pretty fascinating story, and just all around, yeah, it's like that's one of many that are quite interesting to hear about. But yeah, for sure, I think this is an amazing thing that you're doing. And to remind people listening, you can search this on Facebook, and there'll be a link in the show notes of the episode here to find out where you can donate. And whether you want to give $5 or $5,000, it's going to a good cause. So support, give back to the park, give back to this beautiful place that we all love to recreate and just exist in. So as we start to wrap things up, Neil, I definitely, again, need to have you come back when you're done with the thru-hike to hear the story, since this podcast is all about hearing stories from the Adirondacks. But there's 3 questions that I like to ask every listener or every guest before we wrap up a show. So I'm going to ask you those 3 questions, and there's no wrong answer. So there's whatever the answer is, that's the answer. So the first question is, what is something unique to you that you always need to have in your backpack when you're out hiking? Could be fun. It could be sentimental. What's something that's unique to you that you always have to have with you?
That I always carry in my pack, that never fails, that's always with me, a compass.
There you go. Good to have.
Now that's not unique to me.
Yeah.
Hopefully that's not. I hope that's not unique to me, but I don't have any, special, like, some people carry mascots and
sure,
stuffed animals. That's really the only thing that comes to mind, to be honest.
Yeah, there's no wrong answer.
Wrong answer.
Having the compass, but also having the know-how to use it and to put it into practice is the important part of the equation. And my second question is, in your opinion, what makes the Adirondacks a unique place? So you've obviously explored this place like crazy, and you keep coming back for more. You have a foundation. What makes it a unique place from your perspective?
There's one word that comes to mind, and that is chaos. Whenever I'm hiking, especially, bushwhacking, I'm always amazed when I look around, and it's chaos, which is the beauty. It's a wilderness area. It's undeveloped, and it's just chaos.
Yeah, sure. That's an answer I've never received before, but it's a unique perspective, and I like that.
Okay.
And then my third question is, why do you hike? So why do you go put yourself in these positions and doing these adventures, especially for you? These are things that are mentally and physically challenging and hard, and no one's making you do these things. You're choosing to do it. So why do you go out there?
I like the way it makes me feel. And to elaborate, hiking it's an intersection of all the things that interest me, that I'm passionate about, and that I love. I love nature. I love trees. I love identifying trees. I love listening to the birds. And I particularly enjoy the mechanics of hiking, the feeling of my joints and my muscles working. I was a chiropractor for 35 years. That's where the mechanical aspect comes from. And it intersects with my interest in physiology, specifically exercise physiology. I love planning and thinking about it, and hiking serves it. All of my interests intersect in hiking. So that's why I hike.
I love it. All right, Neil, as we wrap it up, where can people find you online? Give us, the links and where people can find you and, donate and all that sorts of good stuff.
Well, the foundation has a website, and let me just open it up here, make sure I give the exact correct name of where they can find us. They can find us, sorry for the delay.
No, it's all right.
ADK High Peaks Foundation. Not very difficult to retain. And what is now on our front page, our welcome page, is the Winter Thru-hike 2024. And there are links right on there. The daily plan and the map, why I'm doing this, my gear list, my previous projects, my training. And of course, there's a link to the winter hike donations. So Winter Thru-hike 2024, that's the name of the project. And that's, if people put that in any search engine, they'll find it.
All right, great. Well, Neil, thank you so much for coming on the show. And again, I'm going to have you back in a few weeks, a couple months, I suppose, when you're done with this adventure. And wish you the best of luck out there. It's going to be a hell of a ride.
Yes, I think it will be. And I really appreciate you having me on your podcast. And I look forward to coming back and letting you know how it went.
All right, great. Well, thank you so much, Neil. And thank you, everyone, for listening to this episode of the 46 of 46 podcast. Remember, check out ADK High Peaks Foundation. There's a link in the show notes. Check that out. And once again, come Valentine's Day, Neil's going out there for the Winter 46 thru-hike. It's going to be great. And of course, the money raised goes to the Forest Rangers Foundation and the ADK High Peaks Foundation. So give back to the park. If you're looking for a way to give back to this land that you all love, that you love to recreate on, love to visit, love to explore, and love to exist in, there's a good opportunity to do so. But thanks for listening to another episode of the 46 of 46 podcast. Head over to 46of46.com to check out everything I have to offer, from ebook to help you hike the 46 high peaks to guide service and much more. Check that out, 46of46.com. Check back on Fridays for new mountains, new stories, new guests, and new episodes right here on the 46 of 46 podcast. And remember to always leave no trace, do the rock walk, and if you carry it in, carry it out. See you on the trails, everybody.
Bye-bye.